are back here on WLTH 1370 AM. That is 92.7 in the FM dial. If you're nasty, it is 7:36 in the PM here on Friday, July the 10th, 2026. That voice you just heard was one Mr. George E. Johnson Sr., who we are celebrating right now, who just passed away this week. One of the most, seminal figures in black culture in the 1960s and 70s. He founded Johnson Products Companies, and along with it, created an entire market of black hair care products that were specifically for black consumers. I think a lot of people in my generation and in the next generation, the Zoomers, we take for granted that there's always been black hair care products that were specifically for black people and black people's hair. I've watched a lot of documentaries about this, namely Aaron Rainan's Black Hair documentary. But I've watched a lot of different TV programs and documentaries over the years, and it's always very startling to me that up until like the 1960s and 70s, if you were a black person, you just sort of made do with whatever you could with your hair. I saw that a lot of women talk about how makeup that they had to use, like makeup that was meant for white women, because there was no makeup really. There was very little makeup made for black women, and to basically work with their skin tones. And I just take for granted the fact that things like Afro Sheen have always been around. I just take this for granted. Like, I just don't know a world in which things like Afro Sheen didn't exist. And sort of these black hair products. And I guess that's probably the most impressive thing that I could say about Mr. George E. Johnson, because he's really at the top of this. He actually passed away of natural causes at his downtown Chicago condo, said his son John Edward Johnson. He was 99 years old, a life well lived indeed. Was born in 1927. Just think about what 1927 was like. I often think about that when it comes to a lot of people. Like, just think about how much the world has changed since 1927. In 1927, everybody didn't have cars. Like, cars barely were a thing. Radio was barely a thing. TV definitely wasn't even a thing. And this man was born in Mississippi, so you know how hard it must have been for him during the Jim Crow South. In 1929, his mother, Priscilla Johnson Howard, moved from Mississippi to Chicago with 3 sons at the age of 18 years old. Good God. This man was 2 years old at the time and soon proved himself as a worker. This man, from the time he was elementary age, had jobs ranging from shining shoes to delivering newspapers to waiting tables and collecting milk bottles. He dropped out of high school, but at the age of 17, he went to work at Fuller Products, a black-owned cosmetics firm, where he was in sales before joining the company's laboratory staff. When Fuller Products turned down a pitch from Chicago barber Orville Nelson, who wanted to make better hair straightener, he actually saw an opportunity, and he stepped in, and he did not waste his opportunity. During his off hours, he would work with his colleague, a chemist named Herbert Martini, to develop a new product that wouldn't burn scalps as it straightened hair. He would attempt to take out a $250 business loan to get his operation off the ground, but the bank rejected him. And so I've heard him tell this story where he actually had to go to a different branch of the same bank and told a white loan officer a phony story about how he wanted to take his wife on vacation. Now, why did he do this? Why did he say this? The reason he said this was because he knew, and these are his words, "I knew the request wouldn't rattle his belief that he was superior to me, nor would it challenge his stereotypes of black men as subservient or unintelligent." And this is from Mr. George E. Johnson himself, from his 2025 memoir, Afro Sheen, How I Revolutionized an Industry with the Golden Rule, From Soul Train to Wall Street. So just think about that. And this is what I talk about with a lot of people, even in my generation, when we have these type of discussions and, you know, when I talk to them or whatever, like we genuinely don't understand how much the world has changed, you know, over 60, 70 years. This man had to, when he was looking for a loan to start a business, had to basically prostrate himself in front of the bank loan manager, the loan officer, that would not challenge his belief in white supremacy. So he didn't want to seem uppity. He couldn't seem uppity. And that's why he got the loan when he went back the second time, was because just saying I want to take my wife on vacation to California doesn't make him seem uppity. Wow. So with that $250, Johnson would launch Johnson Products Company in 1954. And with his wife, Joan, from their kitchen. And from there, they created Ultra Sheen and Afro Sheen. Again, these things that I've taken for granted my entire life. I've never known a world in which these things didn't exist. I've never known a world in which I couldn't go to a black hair store and buy these things. And that's incredible to me, really. At the height of the civil rights movement, he used his wealth to advance black economic ownership and support civil rights leaders. Dr. Martin Luther King, who we talked about a few times during this show, visited his Chicago facility and told Johnson, now this is black power. By 1971, they had achieved $12.6 million in sales and made history as the first black-owned business listed on the American Stock Exchange, while sponsoring Soul Train and funding scholarships for black people. Black power indeed. His company, which was on Lafayette Avenue, South Lafayette, manufactured product lines including Ultra Sheen, Classy Curl, Curly Perm, and Black Tie Men's Cologne. These products had a huge impact on black America, yes they did, who had to assimilate into a white society to obtain better employment opportunities. By the 1970s, black Americans were embracing their natural hair. And a lot of that was because he was selling products like Afro Sheen to help them style the natural texture of their hair. He hired black advertisement firms in Chicago to help develop the print and TV campaigns. Again, revolutionary things we take for granted if you're a millennial. I guess probably if you're a Gen Xer as well. If you're a Gen Xer, if you're a millennial, if you're a Zoomer, these are things we take for granted. That there's commercials with black people in them talking about black hair care products. That there are black hair care products, you know, specifically being aimed at us and treating us like a valued customer. You know, these were revolutionary marketing techniques, particularly sponsoring Soul Train, which in itself was revolutionary because there'd never been anything like Soul Train before Soul Train. We take that for granted. These ads created by Vincent Colors and Tom Burrell were revolutionary. They portrayed positive images of black people interacting with loved ones or working in a myriad of professional careers. So that's important to say. That he was hiring black advertising firms, and they were doing this again to show that black people could be professional. And that being a black professional didn't mean sacrificing pride in yourself and your community. These are things we take for granted. This has not always been the case. I have to reiterate this over and over again to people in my generation, Xers, Xers, Zoomers, millennials. We can't take this for granted. It wasn't always like this. People like George E. Johnson made it like this. That we could express ourselves with our hair or whatever and still be looked at as professional people in a professional setting. His philanthropic efforts included donating millions of dollars to help minority students go to college. He would build a dream home not far from the South Lafayette office in the Chatham neighborhood. If anybody ever been to Chatham knows Chatham is black. Chatham is black. He resigned as the chairman and CEO in 1988 as a part of a divorce settlement with his former wife, Joan, who took a controlling stake in the company as part of the deal. And in 1993, Miami-based IVAX Corp., a pharmaceutical firm, bought Johnson products. But investors brought Johnson's Afro Sheen Products Company in 2009 from Procter & Gamble, reestablishing it as a black-owned company. So while the Johnsons may not own it anymore, it is at least, we can say, black-owned. So that's a very positive thing. And, you know, rest in peace to George E. Johnson. Reiterate again, this has not always been this way. You know, a lot of people had to scrape and sacrifice to create the things that we take for granted today. Just things, simple things like having Afro Sheen, having products specifically for black hair, made for black people. I don't know what that world is like, and so I take it for granted. And I know a lot of people in my generation and the generation after me, we take these things for granted, and we shouldn't. And I'm glad to see that with his passing, Mr. George E. Johnson is getting the respect that he deserves. But I would like to see all of us further his legacy by buying black. By buying black. I talked a few weeks ago about going to Infinity Beauty Supply on 25th and how good of an experience that was, and how I felt so respected going into a black-owned business that wasn't going to follow me around and wasn't going to, you know, treat me like a burden and some sort of like I'm a potential thief or criminal or something. So, you know, in honor of George E. Johnson, you know, get your Afro Sheen out. Or just go to a black hair store, a beauty supply place, and get some, you know. Infinity's on 25th, there's others. And please stay with us right here on WLTH 1370M. We are also black owned. As if you didn't know. Yes. So please stay with us. When we come back, we're going to mop up. Be right back after these.